What is up, everyone? This is Sara G, and hope everyone's holidays were great. I have some great news. Dr. Courtney Tracy will be on soon. We will be asking her a bunch of questions over here at GenZ-Gab. And if you have any questions, please forward them to me at GenZ-Gab or at my personal, Sarah Gallaher 21. So it'll be a fun time. We can dive into a lot of things. Speaking of which, have just wanted to say, with my ADHD lately, I have been word vomiting. For those who don't know what word vomiting is, it is that I can't always come up with the right words, then I always say a filler or whatever. Or I'm on a topic, at least this is how I understand it, a topic, and then I go and say a bunch of things and, maybe don't always think before I speak, which is something I constantly am working on because people tell me I need to work on. But the problem is, I think with many people in the neurospicing community, they deal with the same thing, and then it's also the rejection sensitivity dysphoria. All that fun stuff, which we will be covering later on. I just wanted to say that, and also just FYI, there was not a big deal, but I have some tests coming up, so my whole podcast for the next week following might be a little late. Don't worry about it. It is segueing into this. I'm planning to have Dr. Shannon Clark on here at some point as well, and if you don't know more about all that stuff once she comes on, if you have any questions, again, go and message me over at GenZ-Gab or Sarah Gallaher 21, so that then once things get settled in, we can all have a good open discussion. So yeah, it'll be fun. And yeah, so that's some of the stuff that's coming up potentially, that's going through, and other little family stuff, which I mean is life. Again, please, just as I've said a few times, but again, not gonna get too much into it, please send out good vibes from my aunt. She, has had some on and off medical problems, and she hasn't had the best of year, but you know what? It's all good. It's all fine. Everything will work out. It's just, if you could do that more. So that's why I'm kind of all over the place, and if things might, fall apart a little bit with the podcast, just a little heads up of what happened. Aside from all that, there was no big drama this year with the holidays, so for anyone who had a dramatic or traumatic Christmas, holiday, New Year, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, I'm so sorry. And hopefully, your year is starting off a little better then. So as I dive into this week's podcast, you already know that the Monday mood is one of my favorite things. And you know what? I just wanted to say shout out to all the park workers. I'm giving them a shout out because I went to Disney World. It was right before, it was kind of during the holiday season. Anyone that works that December through early January, end of November, I applaud you. You are Monday moods, because let's face it, people, especially, again, I make those jokes. If you see my TikTok, I went to Epcot a lot. I applaud each and every one of you, and extra comments to the people at Epcot or Disney Springs, because you guys have to put up with even more because you sell the fun drinks. So we're good there. But yeah, I had a great trip. I love the new Guardians of the Galaxy ride. Just FYI, for anyone who might not be the biggest roller coaster fan, I guarantee you would like this one. It is the smoothest roller coaster that I've ever been on. So that's good. And then, your typical, my other favorite ride is Avatar. I love Space Mountain. I hated it actually as a kid, but that's a backstory of I'm a kid that, get a little motion sickness at times. And again, because I had ADHD, I also had to do physical therapy, which I think is why I can handle 3D movies, whereas my dad can't, because of all the weird. There's so much weird stuff, and it's so huge. Just FYI, for anyone who has motion sickness, the most I can ever acknowledge is I have some, but for some odd reason, it really doesn't affect me in the 3D. Like, a lot of times it affects other people, but it affects me more on roller coasters. Like, I can't do the 0 to 60 with rockin'. Like, it just messes me up so bad. Now, I know that Guardians of the Galaxy is faster, but there's just something, and I also get in my head head more. Also, Tower of Terror was never really my thing. I've rode it twice in my entire life, and people can be calling me a wuss or whatever. That's less about motion sickness and more about even if my mom tried to explain to me that it was like the Frogger ride that you do as a kid, up and down and up and down, I can't. There's just something about the whole, like, which I know is the goal, but the whole thing about the elevator stuff, it made me neurotic about elevators for the longest time. Now, again, I've talked about having OCD in the past, and it was way worse as a kid. I've slowly kind of worked my way and coped with it a lot better. But it is funny when I actually mention some of that stuff to my parents. And just so you know, yeah, I've had an intake, I've had all this stuff. Again, it's that it is funny. I know that there's a lot of overlaps with other neurodivergences, but I just want to make it clear when people sometimes say you might have this, you might have that. There's so many stuff. And I wanted to also acknowledge for anyone out there that is self-diagnosing themselves, you are valid. I see you. I accept you. I just wanted to say that slowly when you start to talk about a lot of these, similar and different things, it's suddenly like, do we all have all of this stuff? I just wanted to acknowledge that for a second because somebody said, they used to and they have something else and etc. And then that's where my brain starts spiraling. But no, anyway, going back to the whole thing with Tower of Terror, the problem is that, with OCD, a lot of times it has to do with cleanliness, which is true, or something being contaminated, or just an irrational anxious fear, which again was why for a while they also thought, which I think I do have generalized anxiety. Again, all this stuff goes kind of hand in hand, but it's hard to say kind of what exactly. And I've been doing more research anyway with the whole dyslexia and ADHD stuff with how my brain works and how I'm just probably more prone to the whole OCD, anxiety, depressional things like a lot of people, but I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. We'll save that for later. But the whole thing was that everyone loves being scared and such, but the problem when you have things like ADHD and like autism, etc., sometimes we take things a little too literally. And with ADHD, it's like your fight or flight sometimes happens and activates, and then the anxiety, or it was the OCD. I can't really figure out which one it was. Maybe it was both of them. But the problem was it just made it too hard for me to be on that specific ride. I just get too much in my head about it because it's like, and I know, like, again, I've been in enough, therapy to do the tools and stuff. And I know, like, again, my family's been very good at like having me take a step back, figuring out why, but it's just kind of frustrating because, like, I know a lot of people love this ride. I know that, Tower of Terror was almost taken down and that, it became a big deal. So then it stopped the whole destruction stuff. So that being said, it's just one of those, it made me really terrified of elevators and just why I could not go on it, but then stay. And I think also just like the irrational fear that women sometimes have just with safety. Again, it's all these like obsessive, intrusive, and for anyone who suffers from OCD especially, I see you, I feel you, I hear you, I know what it feels like. And for anyone like taking the whole thing that it's like just about cleanliness, no, that's some part. And Howie Mandel has talked about this too, but I think it's one of those still kind of misunderstood. Again, a good place to start with it is go to Grey's Anatomy when Bailey got MRSA. Now, she still kind of was extra cleanly, but it's also about people moving things, like gestures, stimming, which again, you can with your own other things, but I just wanted to specify that. Or, if I don't have my shoes in the right spot, then everyone's gonna die. Again, it's about just like, I think the best way when I've been told this stuff, because again, a lot of people with anxiety, autism, etc. have done this. The weird thing about OCD is that it's like the repetitive, never ending, and the intention, like you're always asked, what is your intention behind this? And your intention behind it, and it's irrational, and people need to give you like exposure therapy by moving it, but it is so misunderstood. And I feel like a lot of times I at least been like when I've been trying to talk about it on social media a little bit, like where I'm agreeing with someone, it also is like everyone decides to have an opinion, which I get is social media. media. But again, I just want to state again for anyone out there that has it. Again, I see you. I stand with you, you know, and it's a very good way to segue into the conversation that is Ginny and Georgia, because they had a lot of mental health covered this. And again, I could spend hours on hours about this because, you know, it's a darker topic. I won't do as long with it, but you do notice like a lot more of the characters. You can see the PTSD, etc. going on with and can I just say how annoying Max was in the first 5 episodes, but she redeemed herself, and I'm not going to get too much into it with that. But I love Ginny. Ginny, I was not like, I didn't hate her as much as everyone else. I thought her hate was overrated. Like, I thought, hey, if you're going to hate someone, you should hate Georgia just as much too. Actually, Georgia does very questionable things. Georgia also, yes, she has PTSD, but she for sure has like sociopath, psychopath kind of stuff. I mean, she has empathy, so I guess it's different, but she's definitely that overbearing, over-controlling, narcissistic kind of borderline mother. And I know everyone's gonna look at me, but it really comes to light in season 2. I'm trying not to, again, give too many spoilers, but by Monday, I feel like most people who are diehard fans, or the people that would care about spoilers, have seen it all by now, or at least binged it all by now. I've actually binge-watched it twice. And all I can say is Abby and Joe deserve better. Also, can we just talk about when you watch all the shows that Raymond A. Black is in? That guy plays like the saddest character, like the coolest, like with the backstory, but what the actual frick? Like, I was saying this about Maid. Like, what is Netflix doing with this guy? Like, I mean, obviously it's whatever and everyone loves those types of characters, but it's like, I don't actually ship him with Georgia anymore. And here's why. Even though he's got his own sketchy past, Joe, the character in Ginny and Georgia, there's just something like where, bro, I know you know things about Georgia, but you know this also. And yes, I like their confrontation. And she told him that, of course, she thought about something. Like, that writing was gold. Like, see, it was such a slow burn, which I know was what they were going for. Also, though, can I just say how much I love the Padma and Ginny friendship this year? And I loved how, you know, the girl who plays Padma, which a lot of people already know this, but, you know, just the comments going around on everything. It's like they're brother and sister. Joe and her are brother and sister. And I always like get my brain confused because like her name, the actress of Padma, Becky A. Black, and it's like I always think of, and I'm not going to say it because we already know where it's going. We're going back to 2012 Friday, and we don't need that. Again, Rebecca Black's gotten better since that time. You know, we've all seen the evolution, but that's just a bad note what I just said there. But we're gonna go back to what's in though, just how we love though the character growth of a lot of these kids in the show. I really like Hunter this season. I had some sympathy for him last season, but I truly, if I'm gonna ship anyone, honestly, I'm gonna ship him and Padma. I am. Abby deserves way better. It's really sad because you can see how close the cast and how deep they very much are very nice, empathetic people, and that's why it's like you can separate the character from the cast member. But I think that Damian Romero did a great job of playing. I've actually messaged him about this, but it's like I really truly cannot emphasize this enough. Sarah Lampert, please do not put her back with press. The poor girl has been through so much, and I feel like and I get it, this is high school, but God, why? Just why? All I'm getting at, because it's just, and yes, I know that whole toxic trope, and I know whatever, but it's okay. But next season, though, can we get more Marcus, Abby, and Ginny kind of vibes, like what they were doing, hanging out? Now, I know Max gets jealous of stealing the life, but she was so insufferable the first 4 or 5 episodes. Just, she did really redeem herself in the end, and I loved, again, the evolution with her, and, you know, her becoming friends with Amazing, and just her character. So Gracia, the friend group that Max has created isolated within her own, leader group. Now, we all know Max is a selfish bitch at times, very over the top, very, very annoying for the first 5 episodes, about 6 maybe. But the thing that I have to say though, her tremendous growth, and by the end, even with how her dad helped her find success in the role, like she really didn't want the villainous role. She was really pissed off that she didn't get the lead, and that plays into the self-centeredness that is this girl, this character. But I wanted to say though that her and Bracia's friendship evolving, aside from like Ginny and Bracia's evolving with that iconic scene with the sunglasses and the photography done in Zion's apartment, just all around better growth. I've been seeing a lot of comments like this, and it's so true. And I think that honestly, I get why like they have a Ming or a friend group, but I kind of would like to see more done with kind of, less of that type of friend group and just more of the expanding rather than, just like all or nothing, if that makes sense. Now, I don't know much more. Do want to say again, I believe Katie Douglas deserves an Emmy for how she portrays Abby, and Tony Gentry, you do phenomenal. But I just wanted to say that I think that we talk so much about Brie and Howie, and we talk so much about Tony Gentry doing this stuff, like doing phenomenal acting skills, and again, all of them do great. But I think that the thing that we kind of get lost with is that, like, again, the side characters, the ones that are still kind of the main, but in a very much supporting, as it's always stated, which I know I'm very much contradicting, being very confusing probably, but I think we just need to focus a little bit on that too, because the interactions as a whole, and I get it, that's kind of what makes the whole ensembles and the big like multi-camera drama, dramedy, comedies, all those things work so well. So I just wanted to state that. Also, I think with a lot of people who have struggled with body image, they can relate super well to, the character that is Ab. And I hope that they also expand the horizons a little more next season. And I'm not saying like full blown, go do like to that terrible movie To the Bone, like with the group therapy sessions and that stuff. But I think that it would be very cool at the same time to have some of that, add a little more diversification to said, because we're really focusing on Abby's bulimia in this series, which is okay, like, yeah, but there is more than just anorexia and bulimia, and there's more than just, that typical white girl getting it. And I know that, with how writing is and how everything else kind of evolves, very nuanced, but I just thought, maybe that'd be another direction that they could potentially go in for season 3. Or, give her a mini-series spin-off, like all of the things like that happened in between. If they have to make us wait like 2 years again, please don't make us wait 2 years again. I know some of it was COVID protocols, but please don't. So yeah, that was just another thing that I liked about season 2. As much as she was going so psycho over Sophie, I loved her growth. I would love to see her in Silver more next season. You still, though, can't get over, though, just like how hilarious it is to watch how much, and again, this is just how people get, and we all have, I know I'm not the same person I was a few years ago even, but just how much, everybody in Wellsbury needs therapy, and even the ones in therapy, you already know that they're hiding something, so it's just kind of like that never-ending type thing where it's got dark secrets, which I know is the whole plan they're trying to do. Again, the ending was just phenomenal, and I'm like, you know what? I have mad respect now for you, Paul. I didn't know how it's gonna feel, and obviously, yes, I was on the shipping Georgia and Joe for a while, but now I'm kind of over it. Yes, I love that Joe cares about and gave milkshake, blah, blah, blah. But again, even with his backstory, I'm sorry, dude. Past couple, again, roles that I've seen it, they gotta stop, like, putting him in a trope of, like, of being in love with these, like, young young single moms that don't love him back, which I know is a thing. Honestly, it would be hilarious if they would throw in more Degrassi alum. Here's the thing, it's so funny because I actually didn't watch Degrassi until the pandemic. It was always on Teen Nick, but I kind of was, again, I'm, like I said, Gen Z, elder Gen Z, there's always been Degrassi around, but I never really got into it. And so I watched a lot of Degrassi, The Next Generation, and then suddenly it's like, it fits. I didn't really watch a lot of The Next Class, etc. But, I'm picking up on the things that they've got. Also, can we talk about how in the first season I didn't really know a lot of these people were Canadian, which I think a lot of people kind of agree, even though it's shot in Toronto. It literally said that. But yeah, the whole thing with the accent, I didn't really notice a lot of the Canadian accent. And I will say, though, that upper Midwestern, Minnesota, Wisconsin, part of Illinois, it really depends. Like northern Illinois, North Dakota, South Dakota, like we sound somewhat like that. And I'd say maybe in general, Midwest has some of that with the O's and the T's, because I've heard a lot of people say Midwestern accents are kind of like that. But it's really strange because, again, there's still different things that go into different accents. And I know with where I'm at, it's a little more neutral, as I would say. But again, I am Midwestern. A lot of people already know what state. They can probably guess. But the point is, I'm not giving away a lot. I'm not like one of those freaking mommy bloggers or mummy bloggers that go around saying everything and sharing like Mom Uncharted covered that. But the problem is, anyway, people can still figure out, and you already know that. So I was just getting sidetracked again of that. But I was just emphasizing that you kind of really notice that, though, in the whole Canadian thing, with especially just a lot of the same stuff that goes on with the Midwestern accent, especially the upper Midwestern. So I built an 8-foot snowman with my family this week, and that's why I'm playing it up on the Midwest stuff right now, because even though I do not personally like always living here, the one thing about being in the upper Midwest is that you can especially get more snow. I'm not saying that other places don't, but it's a lot more of that kind of joking around. And we have way more access to maple syrup, which I know people are laughing because yes, we get better access to it. We have more of that stuff. So even if I complain, even if I act like everything's whatever, the worst possible, the one thing I can do is, as one of my voiceover teachers used to say, is like, play in the sandbox. I mean, it was playing in the snow, but all of that fun, just let go of everything. And it was just a very clear moment for me with a lot of, aside from family bonding and whatever, it just made me feel something a little different that I haven't felt. Now it's cold and didn't quite understand why we started doing this huge ass snowman, but my brother just decided he wanted to, and so we all went with it. And by the end of it, it was so cool. And you will see, if you're on the video version of this podcast picture, if you want to go and see, though, the whole video of me, it would rather be under 2-3 minutes. So that's kind of where we have to go. And I'm being honest, for anyone who's ever like, they have these long vlog experiences, but they don't really want it on TikTok. Like, some people have made 10-minute content and it doesn't really go over well. That's why I haven't done so much in supersonic speed. Gosh, I sound like Phil from Modern Family. I sound like a middle-aged person right now. The dad jokes, the mom jokes. I've clearly been not doing this for a while now because I'm catching up everyone, and I've also been on family vacations and hearing a lot of that stuff. So yeah, but all in all, a very good break. Very necessary. I have to say that it's okay to take breaks sometimes. I was listening and catching up on a lot of podcasts as well. And okay, sis, if you have not listened to Scout, Sobel and Maddie Mayo, you should. They are very good, very insightful with a lot of their just, the hustle, the entrepreneurial side, but it just in general life stuff. The fact that they're calling out TikTok right now for being just kind of whatever, whatever, and how the algorithm's off and so on and so forth, and just, how much you have to like be involved all the time and it's suffocating your brain. And to be fair, I noticed that when I'm all over to a new show for Netflix, when I get mad that it takes 2 years for them to do it, whatever. And then the craft I have to remember is all about it. It's the art that takes a while and the editing, etc. Because again, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, we are known for having everything at our fingertips. Supersonic way. And that's where I'm going to bring up again great old Laura High, who told me great advice that I've been following again. I've been actually re-editing that video version because, the audio kept getting really choppy, etc. My computer kept crashing on me. And, I think it's great to, have the rough cut out there to show a little bit off in the beginning, and to show then how the final product looks, trusting the process. But I do want to just emphasize again, that was a lot of things I was struggling with towards the end of the year. And now that I see that, Netflix and the people in that, even if they have a cast, crew, etc., they have to really make sure everything is seamless, spotless. They have to keep going double check, re-editing, and have more than one set of eyes, and so that it can make sure that everything comes out right in the first. These are 10 episodes. You only really got one shot, and you can tell it's done beautifully and correctly, and that the heart and soul is put in there, and why it might take 2 years plus to get the whole thing out. Now I understand it a little bit more, even though I'm doing this completely different thing. But you don't realize how much effort is put in. And you know what? I compare the one thing, I'm not going to do resolutions this year so much, but I'm going to just say this. I'm going to say, if I don't follow you, and if I followed you or commented a lot, or, you thought we got some banter going on, I'll still do that. But the thing is that I might not follow you, just everyone out there who might. I also have to take a page from Zion Miller from Ginny and Georgia, Nate Mitchell over there, saying that you would be surprised at how little people actually care, which is beyond factual, beyond. But, he was also saying that about Max, who he knows and met, and, normally a lot of people would agree, but it's Max. Again, that was one of my favorite lines, between Zion and Ginny, when it was her telling that, and just Austin's reaction to Zion. Bro, you've met this girl. You know this girl. This is, that normally most people would agree with you, but not in this case. But I wanted to also state that, so if I still keep that up, but it's just kind of I get it. A lot of times people, once they hit their mark and get famous, etc., things change. It's gonna happen, and I've touched on that a lot. So it's just kind of easier to kind of, not follow fully, because unfortunately for someone like me who's just trying to break in, a lot of imposter syndrome happens, and you can see that again in all these shows. Again, a lot of people feel these feelings, but it's gotta just remind yourself the boundaries that you set yourself. And coming from a family that doesn't really understand or hadn't really learned about boundaries myself in general, and kind of, one side being less about boundaries than the other, it opens a lot up. And I know I'm not perfect. I know not everyone's perfect, but it's just very, very interesting to kind of try to see how that works out. Also, I could do a pre-screen just for some medicine stuff. As a lot of people know, I have to take stuff for my ADHD. And the funniest part was that, the scores were for a 4 and a 5, and that's the best I've ever done. And the only reason I'm telling people this is, I don't really usually want to compare things, but you know what? The doctor that's seen me for a long time even said that this was the best she's seen behind me. So it's like the little wins that you take along the way with it. Now I'm still, again, trying to figure out my endometriosis, and people think like Sarah's got like 1,000 different things, trying to figure out if I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, just all great stuff, right? But the thing is, though, that we live in a day and age, though, luckily, as much as TikTok can be a blessing and a curse, and again, not everyone's going to be diagnosed or whatever, or not everyone's going to be the same, but it's been very helpful for at least me to see some other hypermobile people. And also just keep in mind, though, when you have ADHD, you're already probably hypermobile. I mean, again, went to physical therapy. They mentioned to my parents that I had some hypermobility stuff. And this is what bothers me. They never took it a step forward. They're just like, oh yeah, she's got some double jointedness. She's got some hypermobility. Like they didn't ever question anything more. And now that I see things about Ehlers-Danlos, and I don't think I have it per se, but it's now making me question if I might have it. And yeah, so just considering that, the community kind of building, it's just a lot. And I know I just said a bunch of things that might not make sense, but again, that goes into that's been kind of my life for the past couple of weeks, or like in general. A lot of people are trying to start this like New Year saying that they're not going to get everything together, and that just does not happen. And I think a lot of manifestation happens for a lot of 20-year-olds like me, and I just need to keep emphasizing that, like with the comparing and the contrasting, that I witnessed throughout kind of the past couple of weeks, just a lot of self-reflection, and I'm been a lot happier. Now I feel upset though that I'm kind of, chained to my phone, to my technology. I noticed a lot of actors and other people have taken an even longer time and have taken a complete break from social media, and I'm so grateful that they can have the opportunity to do so. But again, as I'm breaking in, it's that constant battle, but it's always good to just see what you can do to better your mental health. I want to just say though that Cheryl Texera, the Maya's mom from Girls Meet World, she took a huge 6-month break and worked on a lot of things that she didn't know about yet, and she was just saying that everyone should take a break if they feel the need to, but it kind of has to be what you feel on your own time. And I kind of resonated with that, but again, I feel like I can't, and that's what got me to thinking about when I was listening to all these different podcasts like Okay Sis, ADHD in Adult, etc. Just the hustle culture that everyone talks about, and I know I've mentioned this 1,000 times, but it's just like it feels like you're in a rut and just going through the motions, especially like November through most of January. And it's like, how do you save this? How do you do that? What's my next step? What's my next earth-shattering thing that I'm going to do? And I think that it's like, we just have so much time to think about that stuff, especially in the pandemic, that I think it was one of those things I want to bring, like a lot of other people have said too as well. I want to bring that energy from 2019, 2020 with TikTok, where everyone was just kind of getting along. No one was really fighting. And I know that sounds like a utopia, which kind of is, but it was more of like nobody took the following count, the follower count. People actually talked to each other. People were doing things. And now it's just become, again, that popularity type. And also TikTok has been a mess with some of their shadow banning, etc., and maybe even taking down certain creators that shouldn't be. So it's got its own issues, but it just makes me start to think, the whole blowing up, is it actually even worth it? And you know what I'm also trying to do in 2023, which isn't our solution, but again, just the fact that people talk about editing and how you can't take everything seriously on social media, and just the whole thing about some of that hypocritical stuff. I'm gonna stop being hypercritical, watching people be hypocritical, and I think I'm gonna also be gentler just a lot in general. I think if I look at it more as a gray thing than black and white, even though, again, I keep mentioning this, but it's true, ADHD and neurodivergent people have a stronger sense of justice. So I think that that's something, like, as much as that I want to unlearn that, and I guess I have always had, though, kind of a gray way of thinking instead of black and white. I do think, though, that, like, you think that rewards in the system should be kind of different. But again, not everything in life is fair. I do want want to quickly touch on just some of the things that I've seen throughout the week. Again, you talk about the football player who collapsed, etc., and just that how people of color and again Black Americans, we need to step up. And I know that it's like easier said than done, but you need to follow accounts, lift up their voices, because that's the only way. You gotta dismantle and deconstruct. I saw something on Decolonize Myself on like why you want to like be anti-racist, and it was very eye-opening. And again, and constantly checking myself, reminding myself, what are the reasons? And because we live in a society where everything is so normalized and we want to stop a lot of these problems, but in order to stop a lot of these problems, you need to take a step back and actually listen and let them be heard, and also help those because again, the way that society works, they talked a lot about this, is that they shouldn't have to be the ones always saying something. Again, that was very well mentioned in Ginny and Georgia this season, when Ginny had to pick a book for the class and how the teacher was being, and she was getting punished for it. And, the insight that her dad's girlfriend had brought to it. And again, just completely understanding how her therapist was towards her. It is so good. It's so much better than the first. And again, I know I probably said a lot of things that were confusing, and I'm sorry. I really do try to get to the point. I'm also learning that some of this is like a trauma response because of how much, again, I was watching the scene where she had to drop down 2 class levels. The whole college prep versus honors versus AP. I just want to say again, those schools, you gotta consider this. And I know that this is just how the system in the US is, but you gotta consider why maybe some of these kids behave the way that they do. It's because from a young age, we're put into different groups, different categories, whatever, learning disabilities, etc. It messed me so fucking much. It made me never believe and never felt smart enough. It gave me drive, obviously, because I have a master's now, but we need to think of better ways than this or that. And parents, you need to just consider not putting all your hopes and dreams on your child and saying that you do this, do that. And again, I want to say that Ellen and Clint in Ginny and Georgia are a great example of very active parents. Protect them all at all costs, but the fact that they understand Marcus, and they're not saying and yelling at Marcus to apply himself or whatever. They know he has his own struggles. They're understanding. I mean, they understand Max too, but they know exactly what Max feels all the time and how she's feeling. Whereas Marcus lost his friend, he has depression. And I'm not saying that Max hadn't had her own issues, but we all know what I'm getting at. And I just was saying, even with the whole thing with Ginny and Zion, that scene was beautiful in episode 1. And just the fact that, can I say how much I love that, Zion is there to protect even Austin. He treats Austin like his own family does as well. They love him, they adore him. I know people had issues with Grandma Lynette, but I started to see it a little bit. And as someone who has their own issues with some family members like that, I think, though, the most touching moment was when she said, "I don't hate your mom. I'm mad at her for some of the choices." And again, I get that Georgia really didn't want to lose her baby, didn't want them to get custody, etc. And they were just trying to help. And it's like one of those, you see the perspective of both, but you see it as also, though, you can tell, Georgia also wasn't used to having people want to support and give her help as well. So it just kind of adds that extra layer that they were saying. But where she did get her GED at least, but she knew, she even said, I probably should have gone to college. And again, when Ginny says that stuff to her mom, it's not like she's trying to say you did everything bad. She's just saying to her mom, hey, why didn't you, or why? And it's a proud thing because of all the trauma she went through. But again, I love the therapy scene where it's so true. Like, finally, Ginny's getting through to her mom, and where even, the therapist is now allowing Georgia to come in the sessions too, because she's like, I will think this will be way more productive. And then, of course, that shows how much she's grown by the end of the season when she tells Paul like 85% of what happened. And I know people are going to say, well, still, yeah, and I get it, like, why she should be with Joe because of the sunglasses and the milkshake and all that. But it's like, at the end of the day, I'm sorry, I really would ship them together, but with how much just went down in season 2 and how much I can see Zion and Paul knowing, getting, etc., I don't see it anymore. I'm sorry. People can hate on me. People can comment in the comments how much that's an outrage, but it's true. But we did not like the Cynthia stuff, okay? And to be honest, that was freaking Denny Duquette, Jack Gibson with the ghost stuff, Izzy Stevens, like, what the fuck? Like, the whole picturing someone, what? Like, okay, but it took till episode 9 and they also ruined it just with how it was with Georgia. And I get it, we put up boundaries, whatever. But, I mean, come on, I know it was right after, like, the engagement and the witness scene, but it's just like, what? Writers, come on, okay, whatever. But the point is, you could have at least, but I guess that's part of the characters, but I just have so many opinions on that, and it could be talked about more in next week or the week after, because I don't think I'm gonna be done with this for a little while. And I also have to argue that I probably can't handle 2 more years of waiting for another season of this show, but it is what it is. So, yeah. Anyway, again, hope you had a great holiday. Hit like, subscribe, comment below. Hope you enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, comment below. Tell me what you want. What are your thoughts? What you want for going forward? And we will see you next week.